Hello everyone, and welcome to Autocrat. This is episode 102, Playing Wacky City. Last time we saw Romulus and his merry men steal a bunch of Sabine women. They fought and the conflict was only resolved when the Sabine women begged the two sides not to fight anymore. Romulus and Titus Tatius, the Sabine leader, became joint king of Rome as the two groups of people merged.
Yeah.
Now, let's see whether Rome can manage to make friends with literally any of its neighbors.
Yeah. And the title should probably be a spoiler alert, to be honest.
Spoiler!
Yes, exactly. So, a few years after the merger of the Sabines and the Romans, Tatius's family members and friends apparently attacked diplomats from a city called Laurentum for their money while on the road. When they fought back, the diplomats were killed. Which reminds me a bit of that story of Oedipus and his dad Laius here, of just randomly attacking people on the road. Anyway, the Laurentian people wanted someone to answer for this crime, based on some form of law between nations. We basically have the 8th century BC equivalent of the Italian UN. Titus Tatius presumably refused because Livy says he allowed kinship to influence what his ruling on this was. So saying, I can't hurt these people, they're my kinspeople, doesn't matter that they beat up diplomats on the road and killed them. Now the end result was that he got killed for his troubles in a riot in the city of Lavinium, where he had ended up because of a yearly sacrificial festival. So that's the co-king of Rome gone.
Alright.
Plutarch says they killed him while he and Romulus were sacrificing to an unnamed god or goddess. This apparently happened in the 5th year that Titus Tatius was king. Now, I'm going to assume that the peace with the Sabines, happening in 752, was the first year of his kingship. So, his death came in the year of 747 BCE. It still feels incredible to have actual dates for things. It's such a luxury. It makes me so happy.
Yes, I can tell by you smiling.
It's not like Greek mythology where they have 7 contradictory versions. Anyway, Titus Tatius was buried on the Aventine Hill. How do you think Romulus reacted to all this?
Peacefully?
Well, he wasn't that sad to see his co-king go. He's sole king now, that's something again. Either the co-kingship thing was not working out as smoothly as might have been hoped, or else he felt that Titus Tatius had brought his fate upon himself. Either way, he would not fight to avenge his co-monarch's death.
Yeah, so peacefully.
Yeah. Well, instead, he renewed the pact between Lavinium and Rome, and so there was peace between them.
There we go, like I keep saying, peacefully.
However, this is not to say there was a general peace. Because instead we're dealing with a different people and punching them instead. This is the city of Fidenae. Fidenae were not happy that an enemy city had sprung up right on their border, and so wanted to deal with Rome before it became an even bigger threat. So Fidenae sent men to lay waste to the land between them and Rome. They then turned once their path forward was blocked by the river Tiber and began attacking Roman farms instead. The farmers fled to Rome itself and brought tidings of this raiding to Romulus, so he marched out with an army. He hid some of his men and charged straight at the city of Fidenae with the rest of his infantry and all his cavalry. The trap he'd set worked, and the men of Fidenae were goaded into battle.
You do know that AE is not pronounced like that, right?
Is it Fidenae?
Yes.
We're going to go with Fidenae. Now during the battle, the Romans pretended to run away. The enemy rushed forwards and were led straight into Romulus's waiting troops, who rushed at the flanks of the enemy. When the ambush was sprung, Romulus wheeled around and sent his men charging into them again. This broke their opponents, and they were routed. However, they could not flee to the safety of their home city, as the Romans themselves burst into it before the gates could close. Now Plutarch takes over from Livy at this point, and says that on the 15th of April, the city was turned into a Roman colony rather than being destroyed, and 2,500 Romans were sent to colonize it. Shortly after, a plague began, as well as a bad harvest, infertile livestock, and blood raining from the sky in the city of Rome. Oh boy, I wonder if this means good things are coming.
I would not think so.
Probably not. people began to be afraid the gods were angry with them. The same thing then happened in Laurentum, and it was worked out that the gods were enacting revenge for the lack of justice for both the deaths of the ambassadors from earlier and the killing of Titus Tatius. Given how he may have felt about his co-king, I can imagine Romulus slowing the paperwork right down for that internal inquiry. The problems ended when the killers in both instances were dealt with. Now, one enemy down, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's another one.
Yes, the city of Camerium attacked Rome while the plague was still being dealt with. This happened about 16 years after the founding of Rome, so in about 737 BCE. Romulus attacked them, won, killed 6,000 men, and took Camerium. Half of the Camertines were deported to Rome, with 2 times that number being sent from Rome to Camerium on the 1st of August 737 BCE.
Nice, so we are just colonizing everywhere.
Yep. Plutarch highlights that this shows how fast Rome's population had grown and therefore how many people there were to spare. He also looted the city, taking things such as a bronze statue of a chariot drawn by 4 horses, which he put in the temple of Vulcan, probably as an offering to Vulcan.
Yeah.
A statue of Romulus was then placed on the chariot with victory crowning him with a laurel wreath.
He's such a modest boy, isn't he?
However, those 2 cities we just talked about weren't the only one wanting to attack Rome.
Oh, of course they were.
Veii, an Etruscan city about 16 kilometers to Rome's northwest, soon joined in the fun, as it was also nervous about this growing power on its doorstep, which was bullying all of, the neighbors.
I don't know if it's bullying if they attack first.
It is bullying. Dionysus of Halicarnassus, that's a mouthful, please, shorten your name, dude, tells
I
us...
think you called him Gary or something in one episode. I can't remember what you actually ended up calling him, but it was something like that.
We're going to call him John today.
Okay,
So
John Diodorus.
No, John tells us Veii is the mightiest of the Etruscan or Tyrrhenian cities.
Nice, thanks, John.
Veii began raiding Roman land with 1/2 of their army diverting off and defeating the Roman troops stationed in Fidene, with 2,000 Romans being killed.
Oh.
So a Roman retribution force crossed the Tiber River and prepared for a fight. The people of Veii sent out an army. Livy notes that Romulus did not use any strategy in this fight.
I mean, so far his tactic for everything seems to have been punch it or steal it until the problem goes away.
Instead, sheer numbers and his battle-hardened men won the day, with 8,000 of the enemy army being killed.
Ow.
John tells us that...
I should clarify to listeners, he's not called John. But yes, John.
John tells us that there was a confrontation before that, but nightfall forced it to stop without a clear result. It chased the army all the way back to Veii.
Yeah, Romulus, that is, not John.
John could have done it too. However, this town was well protected and Romulus did not try to take it. Instead, he marched back to Rome, pillaging the countryside of Veii as he went as payback. This defeat apparently devastated Veii, and they humbly surrendered to Rome.
Okay.
Because all of that was useless.
Yeah.
A portion of their land was taken by Rome and a century peace was concluded. The land that was taken from Veii was called the Septemvigium, meaning the 7 bits. These were 7 provinces bordering on the Tiber River.
Okay.
He also took the salt, not John again, he also took the salt refineries on the river.
I mean, I thought that referred to a tributary of the Tiber initially. They just say the river in the source. But Dionysus confirms it is at the mouth of the river without naming it in that sentence.
I think you mean John.
Sorry, John, yes. This river being the Tiber seems implausible given the location, so it seems like it's the mouth of that river joining the Tiber where the salt refineries are. I mean, this might not sound like a big deal, by the way, they're giving up these refineries, but Pliny the Elder writes in Book 31 of his Natural History that people used to be paid in salt. So you can see it's a big deal.
I can see that, yes. Anyway, the terms of the treaty were engraved on a pillar.
I mean, I assume as a very unsubtle reminder. Probably just said, we own you.
Yeah. Romulus also took 50 noblemen from Veii as hostage. He held a triumph on the 15th of October 737 BCE, and the prisoners were sold as slaves.
Yay, so glad.
Livy takes a moment there to say that Rome's victories in this period matches the story of the divine birth and lineage of Romulus.
Okay.
He had managed to get the throne of his ancestors back, he had been wise in founding Rome, and he had made her powerful both in warfare and in peacetime.
Right. Okay. Well, Livy ascribes to Romulus the sole credit for the 40 years of peace that will follow, while Romulus ruled Rome as a father, not a king, according to Appian. I should mention that this viewpoint is contradicted by Cassius Dio, who accuses Romulus of acting tyrannically towards the Roman Senate and of giving back the hostages he took from Veii of his own volition, and not with common agreement, as was the tradition. I find it funny the idea that we can talk about tradition when Rome is 16 years old. It can't even legally drink in most countries yet, and we're talking about tradition. The Senate were annoyed by this, and Romulus apparently reminded them that he made them not to govern him, but instead to be obedient. Gives you some idea of what Dio thinks of him.
Yeah, clearly.
Still, Dio begrudgingly praises him as talented at war, but says the Senate loathed him. Keep this in mind for next episode.
I will certainly do so.
Good. Thank you. Plutarch also says Romulus might have set up the Order of the Vestal Virgins, which is odd since we've heard them mentioned in several sources connected to his mother.
Yeah, we did. We even talked about them before.
Yeah, I mean, it might just be the Roman branch he's setting up, or equally his successor might have done it. We'll get to that. However, Romulus ruled for about 37 years. That battle against Veii was apparently the final battle Romulus ever took part in. He did inherit the Alban throne of his grandfather, Numitor, when he died. That said, he allowed the Albans to govern themselves and placed a yearly elected official in charge. Now, Plutarch says that this was the first inkling of the Romans thinking about an anti-royal government and taking against kings, but I find this unlikely. Given that Alba Longa is mentioned in later decades as an independent state, I find it likely that something like, one of these governors revolting probably happened. Equally, Romulus might just have given it to the next available family member, who knows. However, that brings us to about 716 BCE in a whirlwind tour. Although one of my sourcebooks says 715, which doesn't flow that well, I've gone with 16. Romulus is by now about 55 years old. And that brings us to the subject of next episode, what happens when we come to the end of the reign of the first king of Rome.
Ooh.
So, we hope you will join us for that next episode, and until next time, have a great
good time, everyone.
Have a great interval of time, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.